Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Thursday afternoon. On the show today, we will get into all the NBA trade deadline action, what it means for the teams in Texas, what it means around the league, who made some good trades, who made some bad trades, who cleared some cap space. All of that we will get into. We'll also talk some NFL and Super Bowl. Cowboys, something I wanted to bring up yesterday, didn't have time to. Maybe we'll bring this up about Cowboys and their defensive coach search that doesn't bode well for the Cowboys, but maybe it's just a little sidestep in the middle. Patrick's Big Fat Poll today, and of course, we'll get to some more sound from Sark from yesterday. There was so much of it. I thought we could play some more today, talk some more about Texas and what comes up in the future for the Texas Longhorns football team. We'll get to all of that, and of course, your text messages here on the show today, 512-447-3776, 512-447-3776 is the text line number. You guys drive the show. I just try to keep it on the rails, so I would love to hear from you guys today on the show and talk to you. I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning. I am not a rise and grind guy. That is not who I want to be. But I was helping out with the morning show this morning because just situation arose where everyone else who normally handles that kind of thing and handles, business behind the scenes and Ty and Brock and the guys who handled the morning show were all unavailable, and their backups behind that were unavailable. And so the team player I am, the glue guy I am for this company and for this radio station, I get to hang out with Rob Babers and Aaron Hogan. It's not the worst job in the world. So I've been going since like 5 o'clock this morning. So I'm a little tired. So if I slur a little bit or stumble over my words, I apologize. But I'm not used to talking this much and using this much of my brain in a day. I try not to. That's why I work in radio, to try not to work harder. It's to stare at people who work very hard at their sports and then tell them they're doing a bad job. That is why I do what I do. It's to be judgy from a distance without having to put in any real work. But believe me, I'm not complaining because I know we have a lot of cool people on the tech line and people who've served and first responders and all of those people and people who work harder jobs than I have. And I don't want to complain because I get to do this and hang out with you guys on the text line and the listeners. So I appreciate you guys. But just that is where I'm at. I took a 5-hour energy like an hour ago, so I'm ready to go. I'm hoping that gets me through. We're pumped up and we get through this, and then the other work I got to get done when I get home tonight. But it is a trade deadline Thursday. There was a lot of action this morning. It slowed down a little bit, but trades were done. Not any big, huge trades, I don't think. But there were trades. There were trades that matter. There's trades that could help out some teams, but I don't think we saw the big superstar trade. We probably weren't going to. No one really blew up their team. No one really went all in. Dallas kind of went all in for what they could do. They pushed it hard. We'll get into that in a minute. They went hard at it, but the Lakers stayed out of it. They're waiting until the offseason. The Cavs are kind of in a weird place. They're kind of waiting for the offseason. The Raptors went a little bit harder at clearing some space, but didn't go full all in. Still have Bruce Brown on their team. Some of the guys that were rumored to be moved were not moved. The Warriors make a very small trade, don't go big at the trade deadline. A lot of people realize that the prices weren't exactly right, so they did not make a big move, but plenty of trades. I think I have about 10 or 15 moves to talk about today, and there were a few more than that, but it's when we start to get into people where I just have to pronounce names poorly, and they're not huge deals. So we won't necessarily talk about everything, but we will get into the NBA trades. And if you have any trade that your favorite or one that you wanted to see, make sure to hit those up on the text line. But yes, fun day today, hanging out with you all day long, ready to go for a couple hours here on the Sports Complex. But I love you guys on the text line. Keep it coming today so we can keep the conversation going, and it'll keep me awake and keep me wanting to go talk to you guys. Let's talk some NBA, though. Before we get to the trade deadline, we're not going to talk much college basketball today. Normally we start off with that, but there was no Big 12 games last night, so we don't really have much to talk about. We could talk if you guys want to talk about it on the text line, feel free to text it in, and we'll talk about it. But there was no games last night, and we'll talk about the games on Saturday tomorrow. So I thought, let's go with that. It's trade deadline day. We'll go right into the NBA, give that a little bit more time today, and then try and stick some Super Bowl in there, and some more sound with Sark in the 5 o'clock as well. But we did see the Spurs lose to the Heat last night, 116-104. It was another decent game for the Spurs. They hung with the Heat through 3 quarters, were right with them, and then lose the fourth quarter 38-27. Jimmy Butler started to turn it on a little bit more. The Spurs seemed like they were just not able to get the calls or anything. Like they were just fouling. I don't want to say they weren't getting calls. They were fouling or trying to stay off. They just young team didn't know how to play against a savvy veteran like Jimmy Butler, who knew how to get to the paint and either draw contact or get the shot off. He was able to do that. He ends up with a triple-double, 17, 11, 11. Victor Wembanyama has another good game, 18 points, 13 rebounds. One of his better shooting games. Probably could have shot some more, passed up on some open shots to try and take the next best, pass and find the next guy. I think because he hadn't necessarily been shooting great, he kind of was holding off on some of those shots, but he was shooting well enough that you got to kind of put those up. But a good game for the Spurs. It starts off the rodeo road trip. They do get the loss. Wins and losses are not huge for the Spurs right now. You want to keep seeing the progress with this young team. You want to see the young players that you're developing to get to that next level, to see who you can build around when you get into this offseason where the Spurs will have some cap room. They will have some assets to trade and can kind of accelerate into what the Rockets are doing this year, where the Rockets look like a better and better team as the season's going along. That's kind of where you want to be at the Spurs, is where you can plan for next season, and that's finding those players who you'll be able to get into. We can talk a little bit more about that in the trade deadline part of it too. The Spurs tonight, back-to-back there in Orlando. A fun matchup because it's 2 young teams. You get to see Paolo Banchero versus Wemby, and those are both 2 young players from the last 2 couple draft classes, both number 1 overall picks, both doing really well. So it's a fun matchup. Wemby versus Bam Adebayo was good last night. Bam had a pretty good game against Wemby. Tyler Hero was actually the leading scorer for the Heat. But you get to see Banchero versus Wemby tonight. That's a fun one. I mean, basically these Wemby matchups every night are pretty fun to watch just because it's such a different, player. You're just not used to seeing someone that can do what he does. So they're fun every night. You get the Wagner brothers that are out there as well. Should be a fun matchup tonight for the Spurs. Second game of the rodeo road trip. Next weekend is All-Star Weekend, so they are building up into that. Wemby will be part of the Rookie Challenge. He'll be part of the Skills Challenge. Jeremy Sohan today got picked up as the alternate going in for a hurt player. He will be in the Rookie Sophomore Challenge as well. But we'll see the Spurs Magic tonight. The Mavericks take on the Knicks tonight. It is a game that could be, the Mavs versus the team they should have kept to not have to deal with what they're dealing with right now in the trades and trying to fix everything because they just didn't offer the contract that Jalen Brunson wanted a year or 2 ago, and they couldn't get that signed. And they end up now playing against him. They are 3.5-point favorites because the Knicks are very beat up. OG Anunoby, the guy they traded for the Raptors, he is out tonight. Julius Randle is out for a few weeks, so he will be out tonight. Jalen Brunson is a game-time decision. Luka Doncic is a game-time decision. Kyrie Irving is a game-time decision. It's on TNT, so you would assume Brunson, Doncic, and Irving, they will really urge them to play in this game. And their sponsors will want them to play too, so they'll probably all suit up and play in this game. But, you get to see Doncic versus Brunson. And the, Mavs fans get to wonder, what if we just had paid Brunson and he'd still be a Mav and we could have kept him and had him on probably the best contract in the NBA with how he's playing right now. If he would have signed that contract, that extension, before they let it go to another season and let him go to free agency. But you can't go what ifs and you can't go back. So you have to go with what the Mavs did today. Rockets are off tonight, by the way. The Rockets were off in the trade deadline as well. Did not go for it as much in the trade deadline as they made no moves today. They made the Steven Adams trade a couple days ago, which is not a bad trade, giving up Victor Oladipo, who was cut today by the Grizzlies. However, they get Steven Adams. He's out for the season. He won't play this season, but they're doing pretty well. They had a game the other night. Amin Thompson was in the starting lineup. The Rockets were in a weird place where you basically have 5 guys that you want to get a lot of time to, and then Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore you want to get time to. So if you have 7 guys on your roster that you really need to get some time to, you don't necessarily – it's hard to make a trade unless it is a really big trade and you're giving up one of those pieces in it to upgrade a lot. and I don't think they were quite ready to give up Jalen Green. I know they didn't want to give up Jabari Smith, so you'd have to give up Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and Fred VanVleet. Probably not guys with their contracts that anybody was going to go after. And you don't want to give up Amin Thompson because you just picked him in the draft. So really Jalen Green and maybe Cam Whitmore. I don't think they wanted to go up Tari Eason or Cam Whitmore really either. So Jalen Green was the only guy that we really could you could really put on there. Şengün's playing well. You're not going to give him up. So the Rockets were in a place where they're in a good place because they're going forward. They have a lot of young talent on this team. However, they weren't quite ready to, they're not ready to flip the switch and make a big trade and try and upgrade by giving up one of their young pieces. Also, Jalen Green's been playing a lot better in the last couple of weeks once his name's dropped into those trade rumors. He picked it up. So they decided to stand pat, not try and shake the boat, try and go get somebody else. They could have used another low-pro threat. I bet they talked to the Bulls about Andre Drummond. He does not get moved. A lot of teams were looking at Andre Drummond. I think the price was just too high at the end of the day. They were probably offering a second, maybe 2 seconds, and I don't know if they wanted a first for him or 3 seconds or a player in that trade, but the Bulls do not move Andre Drummond, and that means that the Rockets, who was a team that may be going for him, and, I know it was a team that the Mavs looked at. They get another guy. A couple trades that happened, though, as we start to go down the list. The Pacers do get moved Buddy Hield. He seemed like he was always in trade rumors. He was in trade rumors, but the last time his contract was expiring, he got an extension and stayed with the Pacers. He now gets traded to the 76ers, who are going to be active today. We knew they'd be active because of the Joel Embiid injury. They want to stay in the race. They want to be there. They feel Joel Embiid will be back by the playoffs, and they have a good shot because they think he'll be back and rested and ready to go and healthy in the playoffs. So they want to make some moves to stay relevant and ready for him to come back in that playoff race, and they feel like compete. But they add shooting with Buddy Hield. They give up Marcus Morris and another player that is another expiring contract and 3 second-round picks to end up with Buddy Hield. Basically, everybody in this trade is an expiring contract, but Buddy Hield, now they have his bird rights. They can try and re-sign Buddy Hield if they want to keep him and add him to the roster. The 76ers are not quite in the same space as the Pacers, where now that they got Pascal Siakam, they just don't have the same amount of money to go out and spend in free agency. They're going to have to re-sign Pascal Siakam, and that's where the Buddy Hield trade kind of comes in a little bit more important. You can't re-sign him, so you don't want to just lose him in free agency. 3 second-round picks are a little bit better than that. By the way, if you don't know, I'll say this now because I'm going to say the word bird rights and expiring contract a lot in this. Expiring contract just means the guy will be a free agent at the end. The team who's getting him or trading him is giving up something where it's cap space. So a lot of times, a lot of these expiring contracts will turn into cap space, or you have to re-sign them, but that's why the value may be different. And bird rights were basically invented when they invented the salary cap. The Celtics were coming up against it, and they had all these superstars. And it was when Larry Bird's first contract came up, and they went to the NBA and said, hey, guys, our best player, we can't re-sign him under the rules because you made a new salary cap before we had managed our roster. So you have to make a rule that if we have a star player, we have a guy that's been on our roster, we can keep him. And so bird right means you can sign a player that has given, I believe, 3 years of service to your team or another team, but has been on the same contract for 3 years. You can keep them and re-sign them and go over the cap to do it. So that is what Buddy Hield, he will be carried over to the 76ers. The 76ers also give up Daniel House and a second-round pick to the Pistons. The reason they do that is to open up a roster spot, open up a little bit more cap room, and that gives them a spot, a chance to sign somebody in the buyout market. They're apparently looking at Kyle Lowry a lot. Spencer Dinwiddie, who's going to get interest from several teams, is also on that list, but we don't know everyone who will be bought out. The 76ers are going to be looking into that buyout market to get 1 or 2 guys to add to this roster of veterans to try and compete in the playoffs. We can also look at the Jazz trading Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji to the Raptors for Kira Lewis and Otto Porter and a first-round pick. The Jazz basically, I don't know why the Raptors do this trade that much, unless they really liked Ochai Agbaji. I don't know why you put a first in this. Kelly Olynyk's contract is expiring. The Jazz were probably not going to keep him. I doubt the Raptors will keep him either. Kira Lewis is also not playing a ton. Otto Porter's expiring contract, so you didn't ditch his salary so much. I don't really get this trade. It feels like Danny Ainge won another one with the Raptors here. I don't get this one as much. maybe if Ochai Agbaji, remember him from the Jayhawks not that long ago, maybe they really like him, but I don't know why you put a first in this trade. This feels like it should have been a second, but that is what the Jazz get, and Danny Ainge, as far as I'm concerned, wins another one there. A guy that would have been a big trade asset a few years ago, not so much now. The Hornets trade Gordon Hayward to the Thunder for Tre Mann, Micic, and Davis Bertans. That is basically a trade where the Thunder are trying to get rid of some guys. They're going to need to shorten up their roster. They have a lot of talent on that roster. You got to get rid of some guys and upgrade those. Also, Gordon Hayward is an expiring contract. You get to test him out before the free agency. But open up some cap room, open up some spots on your roster for some other guys that you may feel can compete at a higher level. They've drafted pretty well there in Oklahoma City. And so if Gordon Hayward works out, you have his bird rights now. You can bring him back on a smaller contract than what he's making now, if you agree to that, and have him be part of this rotation and help out. Good trade for the Thunder on this one. The Hornets just trying to get out of that contract, bring in some young people that maybe they can try out. Tre Mann and Micic are both not on big contracts, under contract for another year or two, under club control at least. And Davis Bertans, he's on that last year of a contract. He has an early termination option, which basically means it's a player option, but it's not a player option because he can basically get out of his contract and become an unrestricted free agent a year early, but it's his option to do it. That contract he got from Washington, it's a bad trade. It was a bad contract, but ends up he'll be at the Hornets. They'll have to keep him for another year. It's okay. They're not going to be great next year either. So they'll take that trade. The Knicks add Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks to their team from the Pistons. Give up some pieces of that. Some young guys to the Pistons they can try out, and Evan Fournier, which is a salary dump. He is an expiring contract as well. 2 second-round picks in there, but the Knicks add some shooting and some guard play there with Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. The Raptors trade Dennis Schroeder and Thad Young to the Nets for Spencer Dinwiddie, who the Raptors then cut immediately or release immediately. They're getting rid of him. This was a salary dump by the Raptors, getting rid of guys. Dennis Schroeder and Thad Young both had years left on their contracts, so they're ditching him for Spencer Dinwiddie, who was an expiring contract. Get rid of him, start the rebuild in Toronto once you got rid of Pascal Siakam and you got rid of OG Anunoby. You're in the rebuild. You have Scotty Barnes, who's a real good player, but you need to kind of accelerate that rebuild, and that's what they're looking to do. The 76ers traded Patrick Beverley away. Apparently, I don't know what the deal was with that. Maybe he doesn't get along. It seemed like it was going well there, but they go ahead and ditch him off for a second-round pick in Cam Payne. I don't think Cameron Payne is going to be a huge impact player for the 76ers, but Patrick Beverley ends on his 7th team now, I believe, 7th team with the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll see how that relationship goes. The Bucks get a little bit more intensity. They get some more playoff toughness. We'll see how his relationship with Doc Rivers and Giannis and Dame Lillard goes. I don't know if that's necessarily the place I would have put him, but maybe it'll work out. We'll see. Patrick Beverley does get along with a lot of guys in the locker room. The people on the other side don't like him, but he gets along with the guys in the locker room. The Suns also were able to pick up Royce O'Neal and David Roddy in a 3-team trade. Some good other pieces. They gave up some of the guys they signed for minimum contracts throughout this year. Then the offseason, they add some more pieces to give some depth and experience for a playoff run. Good trade for them. The Warriors trade Corey Joseph and some cash to the Pacers for a second-round pick. I didn't realize how much Pacers fans blame Corey Joseph for all of their failures. It seems crazy. But they trade Corey Joseph. He gets waived by the Pacers. So former Longhorn Corey Joseph getting to the end of his career in the NBA. But he is no longer the Warriors. He is now a free agent, could be picked up by someone for a playoff run if they want to do that. And then let's talk about the teams in Texas. We'll first start off with the Spurs. The Spurs trade Doug McDermott to the Pacers for Marcus Morris in a second. The theory is that Marcus Morris will be waived. He is not very liked in San Antonio because he was a player that I believe it was the 2019 offseason, made a deal to come to San Antonio, agreed to a contract, and then because the Spurs had to wait to make other moves before they could sign him, he then backed out of the deal after they had traded Davis Bertans to Washington to open up the space for him to come in. He backed out of it and went somewhere else. Spurs fans were like, we traded a player to get you, and then you backed out. You kind of screwed us. So he is not liked. He's been booed in that town for several years. He's likely never going to play in a Spurs uniform. They're going to waive him. The thought is that they may be looking to, get Doug McDermott a chance to go play on a team that has some playoff hopes and let him get playing time as they let some of the younger guys on the team get a few more minutes on San Antonio, figure out some guys in the rotation. And it also opens up a roster spot because there was news today, and this is just speculation, that this may be someone they're interested in, but Killian Hayes, he's a 7th-round pick in 2020, got cut today from the Pistons as they were making room for all of their moves. And there's thoughts that he is from France as well. His dad was an American basketball player, but he's from France. There may be thoughts that maybe the Spurs might want to take a shot at going out and getting him and bring him in at 25 years old, point guard, maybe see how he works with Wemby and just give it a flyer for the end of the season with Killian Hayes. Or they could be looking somewhere else, but give another younger guy a shot to get some minutes with Doug McDermott, not necessarily being the guy right now for Texas or for San Antonio. You want to give the younger guys credit because you're trying to figure out what your plan is going to be this offseason. And then the big news in Dallas. Dallas goes as far in as they could. They leverage a lot of their future. They give up the only first-round pick they could trade. They also have to go and make a swap with Oklahoma City where they swap picks with Oklahoma City in, I believe, 2028 to get Oklahoma City's 2024 pick. Oklahoma City's betting they'll be pretty good, and Dallas may not be in 2028. They're taking that wager, giving up their pick in 2024. I'm sure it's protected. But they're making that switch, which they could send off to get 2 trades done. First, they make a trade where they acquire Daniel Gafford from the Wizards. Big man, basically a ton of potential in Daniel Gafford. He gives the Mavs something they need, which is someone who can play around the basket, a good rebounder, a tough guy. He can play defense. He can bump around for you in there. He's not a great scorer away from the basket, but can score underneath the basket, can block shots, can rebound the ball, give you some toughness that they really needed. 6'10" guy. A good pickup for them. They had to give up a first, it ends up, but it wasn't theirs. It was part of that Oklahoma City trade is what they do to get Daniel Gafford in there. And then they also make a trade with the Hornets, trading Grant Williams and Seth Curry. And then the other first they had for P.J. Washington, another young player that, the Hornets were probably not going to re-sign. He's a good young player. But again, he's not necessarily the defensive threat that he needs to be right now, but a long player, good offensive around the rim, a good scorer, so offers a lot of different possibilities and youth that could grow up after the Grant Williams, which didn't work out the way they wanted it to. They move on from that mistake or whatever they felt was a mistake and go pick up P.J. Washington to add to this Dallas team to try and give Luka a better shot to go for a title, because when you have a guy like Luka, the same thing we've seen in Milwaukee this season is that Milwaukee is trying to do whatever they can do to keep Giannis from going to New York or going wherever else. So they keep trying to make these big trades. That's what Dallas is doing. You also throw in the fact that Mark Cuban's no longer the main owner, but I think him and the staff that he's running understand that if they're not competitive, the new ownership could kind of break the Mark Cuban's running everything rule pretty quickly and say, you guys are out. You guys are losing. You're not getting there, and we're going to reset and do what we want to do and bring in more of our people. But as for right now, they make a couple trades to address some things they need. They're also going to be in that buyout marker. Spencer Dinwiddie, who was part of the Kyrie Irving trade, has played with Dallas before. They're going to be seeking him after he is released. But the Lakers and 76ers are also be in talks to try and go get Spencer Dinwiddie. Not a bad day for the Mavs. You had to give up a lot to get where you got. But if you really said, this is it, we're trying to go for it, our window, we feel, with Luka, we need to be competing for titles, and we've been treading water around the bottom of the Western Conference, or the bottom of the playoffs of the Western Conference, a 6 to 8 seed. We need to be getting into that top 4, where the top 4 teams in the West right now are all tied. We want to be in that group of guys, and they feel they can get there in a little bit when you know what Luka can do and how good he is. So try to add a couple pieces, add another big man down to help out. Derek Lively's been hurt, but when he comes back, you add a couple young bigs that you can play at center and rotate them. You add P.J. Washington that gives you some size, and hopefully you can get him to be at least a little bit of a rim protector with his size and athleticism. Add him offensively as well, rebounding. make it so Luka Doncic doesn't have to be the 28 rebound or 18 rebound guy that he was the other night. I'm not against what they did. I think they probably overspent, but that's what happens when you are desperate. That is what happens for the Mavs. And the Rockets stand pat, probably the best decision for them as well. Everyone in Texas didn't do that bad. I don't know what the Raptors were doing with the Utah trade. The Pistons are just trying to figure out what they can do. They had way too many point guards on the roster. They're trying to clear that up, but they're such a dumpster fire right now. They're trying to figure out what's going on in there. No one really made a terrible trade. Some were not great, but I think everyone came out okay out of this trade deadline. We didn't see the big swing and miss yet, but we don't know what's going to happen with the Mavs. PJ Washington and Gafford are both guys that have been inconsistent, and depending on what they do with Jason Kidd and Luka and Kyrie, those both could be misses or they could be big hits. And only time will tell with both of those guys. All right. That's enough of that right now. If you want to talk more or have your opinions or rated grades for these trades, send those in on the text line 512-447-3776. And let's get to Patrick's big fat poll of the day.
Patrick's big fat poll of the day on the Horn.
All right, Patrick's big fat poll of the day today on the text line. We want you to talk about some Texas football. We're going to play you some more clips from that recruiting signing day. That was all yesterday. Sark spoke to me for 45 minutes. We only got to play about 5 to 10 minutes of it yesterday, so we'll play another 5 to 10 minutes in the 5 o'clock today to talk about that. But we do have a freshman class for the Longhorns with some really good players. We asked you this question last year, too. We were trying to figure out which player we thought was going to be the biggest impact freshman. And so with the new freshman class that is now set, that everybody is signed from early signing day and now signing day, we know who the freshmen coming in next season are going to be. There still could be some transfers. We're not talking about that. But the question is, which Longhorn freshman will make the biggest impact next season? You'd be Colin Simmons coming off the edge, Ryan Wingo at wide receiver. We're not sure what that wide receiver rotation is going to be with a lot of new guys, transfers, sophomores coming in. Does he break the rotation and get in there early? Does he work out in kickoffs? Brandon Baker, is he get into that offensive line and start playing and just, has like a Kelvin Banks year in his first year? Kobe Black, that secondary needs some help. Xavier Filsaime, another guy they need some help for in that secondary. Do those guys come up big for Texas in the secondary when they're rebuilding that and play a lot their freshman season? Does Jarrett Gibson come in and in a running back room where, you have some guys that are CJ Baxter and Jaden Blue that you expect to run pretty well next season, but you never know. Injuries could happen and playing time could move around. Does Jarrett Gibson get in there? Jordan Washington, the young tight end. A lot of people think he's not quite ready to make a big step next year, but we know the tight end position without JT Sanders. They've got the transfer coming in as well, but Jordan Washington, those are just some names. You could have another one on there that you think will be a big impact next season. But what class of 2024 recruit coming in as a freshman for Texas do you think will have the biggest impact his freshman year for Texas next season? Let us know on the text line 512-447-3776. When we come back, we'll get into a replay for me and Rod B this morning, get to your text messages, and keep it rolling right along here on the Sports Complex here on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Musical theme of the week. People who have played the Super Bowl halftime show. Chan, I saw you ask who I was doing this morning. Super Bowl halftime show performers. They never got it. They didn't pick up on it. They were in the We Other World moment. But I had songs already picked out for that. So I did it on the morning show this morning too. So yes, we have all of that here on the Sports Complex. Some good songs there. Bruno Mars actually did he was one that I was not excited to see, and then had a really good performance. The Red Hot Chili Peppers came out. It was very nice. It was good times. Why don't we get to some sound from Hook 'em Up with Ian Robbie this morning. I was in with them and doing it, so I'm a little loopy from being on all day, working all day. But the good news is they had some good stuff to talk about. Behind the Burnt Orange Curtain, Rob Babers taking you back behind the BOC. Some good stuff there. We'll give you that on a Hook 'em Up replay here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019 AM 1260. The Horn app and hornfm.com is where you listen to us all the time, and you listen to the Hook 'em Up replay right now on the Sports Complex.
All right, Sark had a media availability yesterday, and it was a damn good one, actually. I mean, I don't know if there was a topic discussed yesterday where he didn't go into great detail about whether it be positions, whether it be about the new recruiting department, whether it be about coaching changes. You've had quite a couple of those. Matter of fact, we'll hear from Sark talking about coaching change. I think that's important too. But before we dive into some of the other audio from Sark, let's hear from him talking about the biggest piece of news that came out of his recruiting department changes, because now not only have they promoted some of the staff from within, they've also decided to create a new position, a general manager position. First time on the 40 acres, we've had a general manager here at the University of Texas, and Sark was asked exactly what role, what's the responsibility does the general manager play for the University of Texas?
Sure. Well, I think one thing, when I came on board, Brandon was, I believe, like an offensive analyst, and you're trying to assess the current staff. You're trying to assess who we're bringing in, and Brandon and I just kind of hit it off. I don't know if it was the quarterbacks in us. We were kind of speaking the same language. His perception of players, I thought was very impressive for a young guy. His perception of character, I thought, was very impressive for a young guy. His ability to communicate, I thought was really incredible, and it was a guy that we've just grown. Our relationship has grown over 3 years now, and so I felt like the time was right for him to assume this role. I think so many times in football, in college football, it used to always be director of player personnel, and that's fair, and that's what John Michael got elevated to that role. When you're really assessing talent, looking at your roster and things of that nature. But a general manager is so much more now. When you start talking about transfer portal, you start talking about NIL, you start talking about relationships with players, you start talking about really managing the roster at a little bit of a higher level. I wanted to make sure that I had somebody in that role that I was connected to on another level, and I think my time with Brandon has allowed me to do that. I think he thinks a lot like me, which is important. As much as I try to kind of oversee it all, I want to make sure if I can't be in a meeting that somebody's thinking and speaking on my behalf that is on the same wavelength as me. And I just couldn't be more excited. I think he's a rock star in our profession, and he's going to be in high level roles for a long time.
A rock star in our profession. And I think it's interesting that basically Sark just said that he and Brandon Harris, they vibe. They're like-minded. They see football. They see the football world the same way. And that's important. That's probably why he ends up getting the general manager job, even though I guess John Michael Jones had been there for longer and took over the director of player personnel role, had been there longer. Seems like Sark just wanted somebody in those meeting rooms, like you just said, that sees football the way he sees it and that's like-minded to him. And I love what he said about he judges character well. That's part of recruiting, right? Sark's big on the culture of this team. He doesn't want anything to interrupt like the organic growth of the culture. He talks about culture a ton, and a lot of culture. I was even told this by Mike Shanahan, the elder Shanahan. Culture is about character. Culture is about character of human beings. If you just individually make sure that you're bringing in high quality character human beings at every level of your team, whether it be in the front office or whether that be talent acquisition or whether it be the coaching staff. He said, honestly, the culture will take care of itself. That was his belief. And I kind of believe that, but you got to be very meticulous in who you're bringing into your program, which is, we even heard Jeff Banks say this during the first early signing period now, because that was the actual signing day, even though it doesn't have the same, doesn't really have the same cachet as it once did. But remember, Jeff Banks said, we look for signs. We're looking for signs. We bring in players, signs of respect, signs they respect the game, respect the locker room, respect their coaches. He said that's what they're looking for. If they don't see those signs, then there's a good chance that they're not bringing a really good player in, that a lot of the fans think that they should be recruiting this guy or that Texas needs this guy. He said it's probably because we haven't seen enough of the signs with that player. And what he said about, I think, Brandon Harris is really good at diagnosing and identifying those characteristics of high-quality football character. All right, so let's get into this other cut here, because I think, Sark has talked about the coaching changes, but you got 2 coaching changes so far with Johnny Nansen. You got a new defensive line coach in Kenny Baker. Here is Sark talking about the coaching changes on the 40 acres this offseason.
One thing we're really proud of here, and going into year 4, I've had the same coordinators on our football team for now going into 4 straight seasons. Whether it's Pete Kwiatkowski, Kyle Flood, Jeff Banks, and that's critical for stability and continuity on your staff. I've had the same strength coach now, Torrey Becton, going for 4 years, so I think that's big for our players. But naturally, with success comes opportunities for other coaches, okay? And naturally, we're trying to find the best coaches that fit us culturally, but also that can develop players, that have proven to develop players, and that can recruit at a high level. So to bring in Johnny Nansen from Arizona, who was their defensive coordinator at Arizona, and a heck of a turnaround that they had last season, a guy that has worked with me in the past at Washington and USC is a huge addition for us. And then to go identify Kenny Baker from the Miami Dolphins to come and coach the defensive line, a guy that every person I call to ask about can't rave enough about the quality of coach that he is, the way he can relate to the players and be demanding, but yet still relate to them so that they can continue to grow. And whether you want to call Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer, all of guys that I respect in the profession, couldn't be more excited to have Kenny on board for what he I think is going to bring to us, not only on the field but also from a recruiting ranks.
There you go, Coach, talking about the coaching changes on the 40 acres. And there's one other cut I thought was really interesting. There's a bunch of really good stuff here. We don't have time to play everything. But Sark was asked particularly about his culture, which he is really proud of, and he has championed a lot of his culture, helping him win games last season, right? The types of having goal line stands on defense, clutch receptions to close out a game on offense, like with A.D. Mitchell, right? Or the way you ended the Bama game on the road, being able to choke Bama out with your run game. Those are cultural wins for Sark. He really does pride himself on the culture that he has established, helping him win some of those games in clutch time. He was asked, how are you going to make sure that culture still persists, that culture still exists when you've lost a lot of your, what I call, culture bearers? You lost Jay Witt. JT Sanders is one of those guys. JT Sanders is going to be gone. He was one of your guys. X-Man's one of those guys. Jalen Ford was one of those guys. Murphy, Sweat. These are all guys who really were your culture bearers throughout the season, made those clutch plays. Here's Sark talking about how that culture still, even with guys leaving, it still will be the focal point of the program.
Yeah, no, I think that's big. I think complacency is like the devil, man. I cannot afford anybody in our building to feel like we've arrived, right? Because this is a new team, and this team now has to develop their culture. This team has to develop their strengths. This team, I have to identify their weaknesses and how we can improve upon those things. We are fortunate, though, to have a Quinn Ewers back, to have a Jake Majors back, to have a Kelvin Banks back, to have a Alfred Collins back, to have a Maurice Blackwell back, to have a Jahdae Barron back, to have a David Benda back. I mean, we've got a lot of players who have been with us now for 2 and 3 years that really get our culture, right? I mean, it's ingrained in them. Now it's their responsibility to get that ingrained in these 30 new players, right? As much as it's the coaches, man, it's way more impactful when it comes from, the leaders on the team. And so that's always the challenge of empowering those guys and them taking responsibility of it and then growing this team into the team that we want to have as quickly as possible.
There you go. So he's just hoping that the guys who have been waiting their turn to be a culture bearer, that they take advantage of the opportunity.
Good stuff right there, Rod. That is awesome, and that's as important as talent is the chemistry and the leadership is just as important. Mm-hmm. It really is. Yep. And one of the things we'll be watching for this year with all the returning production and 70% returning plus really big portal acquisitions and coaching continuity. We go back to that Bobby Bowden quote we talked about a lot.
It's a good quote.
You take your lumps in year one, you get a little bit better in year two, year three, you start winning close games. Mm-hmm. In year four, if you're doing it right, you start stretching out and winning by big margins.
It's like what do you say? You lose big, all right, then you lose close, then you win close, then you start winning big.
Yes.
And Sark was at the win close phase last year. So this should be the win big phase where you are closing out opponents and you're actually not blowing teams out, but you're winning by a considerable margin. And that's what I think looking for this season.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the U of H or the K-State or the TCUs. About
this year, we don't have to remind people, but there were a lot of close wins, but the two losses were very close, right? Last plays against Oklahoma and Washington.
Well, you had a goal line defensive stand twice.
That's what I'm saying. Even a lot of your wins were close.
Yeah,
close
exactly.
wins and your two close losses. Yeah. The hope is next year, as you continue to grow this culture and build what you're about, and Tark just said it, complacency is the devil. It's about stretching that out and starting to play 4 quarters of great football with a veteran quarterback who's made 22 starts and a veteran offensive line.
Good stuff there. Behind the burnt orange curtain with Rob Babers playing some clips. We will play more from Sark's presser yesterday. In the 5 o'clock, we'll continue to get to your text through the 5 o'clock, and we'll get to your text messages when we come back here on the next segment here on the Sports Complex. If you guys want to talk some Super Bowl, throw that in there. We'll talk a lot more Super Bowl tomorrow, too. We'll see if we can put some space into it in the 5 o'clock for you as well. We'll keep talking NBA trade deadline, your thoughts on that, and the poll of the day today. Which Longhorn freshman will make the biggest impact next season? Keep sending those in. 512-447-3776 is the text line. We'll come back with some text right here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back at the Sports Complex here on the Horn on a Thursday afternoon, playing artists who have played the Super Bowl halftime show all week long until we get to a 512 Friday tomorrow. Of course, Tom Petty, one of the best halftime shows as well. Just Tom Petty's always awesome. So good to watch that. Let's get to the text line. 512-447-3776. Talking NBA, talking college basketball, talking NFL, talking Super Bowl, talking Texas football. And asking you the poll of the day, which Longhorn freshman will make the biggest impact next season? Let's get to some of those talks. Texter says, overrated Pat Beverly needs to retire already. You know what I don't like about this text is because you're going to make me defend Patrick Beverly, and I don't want to. I don't want to defend that man because I want him to go away too. If I never heard from him again, I'd be a happier person. But I will say, I don't think he's overrated because I don't think he's really that rated. So I think he's where he is. You know, he's a tough guy. He's going to go out there. He's going to work his butt off for you. He's going to be the energy guy. And I think the reality of Philadelphia saying, well, we probably don't necessarily need that mentality right now as we're, without Embiid, you're going to try and take over the locker room a bit more. Maybe we'll move on from that. Maybe you're not happy with being here, which he doesn't seem to be happy with many places he goes because of playing time he gets and other guys get out there. But for Milwaukee, when you're trying to get a little bit more defensive edge, one of the reasons that they wanted to bring in Doc Rivers was to try and get more effort on both sides of the court. We know Dame Lillard is not a defensive threat, so maybe you bring him in to shake things up on the defensive end. Maybe they cut him too. Who knows? But I would believe that it could be something where they say, let's try this, and we'll see. I think if he busts out in Milwaukee, it ends him being the guy on any teams that are going for championships. Because if you can't make it on the 76ers and then you can't make it on the Bucks, I don't know how many other teams are going to give you that shot and a lot of playing time to go do it. But I won't say overrated just because I don't think he's really that highly rated. I think we all just think of Pat Beverly's biggest moments are injuring other players and celebrating a play-in win like he won the championship. Those two things are what I think of when I think of Pat Beverly, and that's not exactly what you want to be thought of for a career as long as he has had in the NBA. Texter Jimmy the Gringo says, I meant to ask you this yesterday afternoon, but completely got caught up with my kids. A good excuse. Patrick, why were the Iowa State coaches' shirts so tight on Tuesday night when they played the Longhorns? Much appreciated. Jimmy, I don't know. I could not tell you. I'm not a part of the Iowa State fashion team. I didn't notice it, but I'm guessing they are. And look, I'm not a tight shirt wearing guy, even if I was in shape, but as a big guy, I'm definitely not a tight shirt wearing guy. I never thought, you know what? I don't think anybody ever wanted to see how much pudding someone could fit in a bag, in a grocery bag, and just that's what I look like in a tight shirt. So I don't do that. But I guess if you got it, flaunt it. That's what they're going for. I'm guessing it's Iowa. It doesn't feel like Iowa has a lot of guys who can pull off a tight shirt. Maybe they are. Maybe the potatoes make you strong. I don't know. Maybe the corn makes you strong. It's corn there, right? Idaho's potato. Iowa's corn, right? Did I get that right? I don't know my offensive stereotypes of states, but I don't know, Jimmy. I don't know. My man, Father Rhymes, says that was an extremely concise and complete breakdown of the trade deadline. I appreciate that. We'll have that up on the podcast page. If you missed it, you can go check out. I tried to make it quick for you. I know not everybody's a huge basketball fan. We can talk about it on the text line if you want. And it also says it's got to be Xavier. Feels to me coming up big next season. Yes, in that safety position, I know Mukuba will be coming in as well. He'll be a big part of it. But feels to me you're going to need that rotation. They did rotate a lot early in the season, and Sark has talked about needing to rotate players a lot to try and make it through that, 15, 16, 17 games you may be playing with the new playoff. If you can keep getting further and further in, you're going to need to rotate early and get guys playing time. So I agree that he's going to definitely get some because that safety room looks a little thin, and they need to help out in that secondary for sure. Right Guy from New Mexico says, I think it'll be a toss-up between Colin Simmons and Kobe Black. Both are going to be stars in the future, if not next year, but my hot take will be Kern, our new punter. Kid has a leg. I like that. I think Kern. I think for me, I would say both those, Kobe Black and Colin Simmons, both big picks. Colin Simmons is going to be fun this year because I don't think he needs to be used all the time. He doesn't need to fit in everywhere, but he's situational. And if you use him situationally and you're able to put him in where he's in a winning position, that could be fun for him, and he could make some big plays as someone who kind of gets in fearlessly on some plays and goes after the quarterback. Could be a good use for Colin Simmons next year, but we'll see what they do with him. And depending on what the health of the rest of the guys are, and, you still have a Colton Vosick who's coming up in that. Ethan Burke's still there. Some good players still on that line. All right, let's take a break real quick here at the top of the hour. We'll come back, get to more text messages, and get into some Sark Presser. We may talk some Super Bowl as well. Whatever you guys want to talk about, hit us up on the text line, 512-447-3776. We'll be right back on the Sports Complex and the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Hour 2 here on the Sports Complex on a Thursday afternoon. Get to some more recruiting day, signing day conversation from Sark yesterday, his press conference yesterday. We'll play some more audio from that, talk some more Texas football, maybe get a little NFL and Super Bowl talk in there as well. We'll keep going on about the NBA trade deadline. That closed up today at 2 p.m. It is over. We've gone through everything that happened in that. But we'll rehash anything on the text line if that's what you guys want, because you guys drive the show. I just try to keep it on the rails. That means whatever you want to text in, 512-447-3776. I try to get to everybody on the show that we can get to, and we try and have good conversations about it, whatever you guys want to talk about. College basketball, too, and that, we can get into on the text line. And the big fat poll of the day today, since we're talking signing day, which Longhorn freshman will make the biggest impact next season? That's what the question of the day is. Which Longhorn freshman will make the biggest impact next season? Text that in 512-447-3776. I do want to get back to the text line since we got a few more coming in, and then we'll take a little break. We'll go into some signing day stuff. That sounds good with you guys. My next Nate says it was nice to hear you this morning, PD. Funny that I got Aaron to read something that inappropriate. Nate, I have to tell you, I have to read all of your texts before I say them on air now. I know that 90% of what you text in I can't read on air. So I have to read all of your text before I say anything that you say, or else I'll get caught up like Aaron did this morning, trying to get us in trouble all the time. And the texter says, I know Colin Simmons is the obvious answer, but Zena at 6'4" is going to be fun to watch. I agree. I think he's a tiny bit more of a project, but he is going to be a lot of fun, and he could make a big impact next season. But yeah, I'm putting him as a tiny bit more of a project that I don't know how much playing time. I'm kind of hoping he doesn't, because I think if he gets more playing time, it means that there's not a ton of depth. But you don't know, because the defensive tackle position is going to be a little bit lighter without Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. But I agree with you. I think he's going to have a really good career and be entertained to watch throughout his career. Texter says, is Bum Phillips in the Hall of Fame? It's good. The Hall of Famers are announced tonight. If you didn't know, the NFL Honors is tonight, I believe 8 o'clock. And it's 8 or 9 o'clock. But they'll be announcing the Hall of Fame class. Some of the names have already been leaked. One of the ones that there's a lot of reports that's very cool is Steve McMichael. Played for the Bears, played for the Longhorns, had a great career, was a wrestler, was part of the Four Horsemen at one point. Steve Mongo McMichael. But Steve McMichael is reportedly going in, dealing with a lot of health problems now. So it's very nice that they're getting it to him while he's still able to, be told about it. And hopefully he'll make it through the Hall of Fame and get his message out and be able to get some help to keep getting by. But a very cool thing for Steve McMichael, another Longhorn. I believe our man CB said that this is the 6th Longhorn that will be in the NFL Hall of Fame. As for Bum Phillips, he is not in the NFL Hall of Fame. He is in the Titans Ring of Honor Hall of Fame. They put him in there, which, that makes sense. It's the Oilers, and that's where they went. He's also in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame for his contributions. But for the NFL Hall of Fame, his head coaching record in the NFL is 82-77 in the regular season, 4-3 in the postseason. That is not normally going to get you too far into the list. And NCAA was 4-5. So as a head coach, he was not that much over 500 as a coach, which will usually not get you in. Had a contribution to the game for sure, but I don't think he will get in with just a just above 500 record for Bum Phillips. But he's in the local ones, but I do not believe he'll get into the NFL Hall of Fame. WPI Parts Guy says, Patrick, thanks for this morning. It was good to hear you on my way in. And as soon as my way out for the ride home, many thanks. Bet you're tired, though. I am tired. It took a 5-hour energy. They should be paying me to say this, but I took that before the show to try and get in. The sad part is I've given up soda now, and I'm trying to, be a little bit healthier. So I don't have caffeine really either, and I'm not really a big coffee guy. So I haven't had caffeine in 2 or 3 weeks. So it's like trying to find ways to just I need caffeine, but I don't want to drink a soda. So I'm getting through it. We're getting through it. The sad part is I still have 5 or 6 more hours of work that I probably need to get done. And some will get pushed tomorrow, but I'm basically going to work until I fall asleep tonight. So, but there's other people that have much worse jobs than talking sports with you guys on the text line. So I'm not going to complain because I get to do this every day, and that's a whole lot of fun most of the time. Most of the time. Sometimes the Longhorns make it tougher on me, but most of the time it's a lot of fun. Texter says, both Texas Tech and UT are struggling. Who do you think is going to finish with a better Big 12 record? They were trying to mimic the NCAA referee. These dudes need to wear something a little looser. I agree that, the tight shirt thing is probably not a great look. But I guess Iowa State, it kind of fits that program. I don't think in a major school it would work as well. Not to take a shot at Iowa State, but one of the top, if you're talking a blue blood top school, I don't know how much it would work. But Tech, I think Tech's not struggling too much. It's a Big 12. Unless you're a top 5, top 10 program, like Kansas is struggling at points in this season. Houston's really the guys who are probably doing the best out of everybody because they play really, really tough basketball. But even they lost the other day. So it's a Big 12. It's a crazy gauntlet. When you talk about playing 6 teams in a row, I was checking up on some other teams, and this is not a shot at Chris Beard at all. I don't want to take a shot at Chris Beard, but you were looking at Ole Miss, and I was seeing how he was doing. And you say, well, he's doing pretty good, except for Ole Miss has only played 5 ranked teams the entire season, and they're 0-5 against those ranked teams. Texas played 6 in a row and went 3-3. So a lot of these teams that are kind of in that same area of Texas, of win percentage and stuff like that, are not playing the same caliber of teams and the same just ranked gauntlet that you're going through at Texas. And Texas Tech as well. Texas Tech is playing in that same division, in that same conference. So they're struggling. I would say if I had to say right now who will finish with a better Big 12 record, I'll go with Texas Tech, unfortunately, just because I know what Texas' schedule is and I haven't looked at Texas Tech's. I will hope it's Texas. I'm hoping it's Texas that they turn it on. But just knowing what they have coming up, it is going to be real, real hard to have you're talking about going to Baylor, going to Houston, going to Texas Tech, going to Kansas. That's that's like 4 games that if you come out of that 2-2, you have to feel okay about it. And so just knowing that Texas, if they get the wins they need, they're probably still got 3 to 4 more losses this season. Just going. If they don't lose 3 or 4 more games, then there's no need to talk. They did well at the end of the season. But I think they have 3 to 4 more losses in the season. Just looking at their opponents, it's just tough. It's just tough in the Big 12. Dexter says Mike Hunasary, freshman with the most impact. I'm not even pulling that name off the top of my head. I'm not pulling that name, but yeah, Mike Hunasary. All right, I like that. All right, my man Chan. I always appreciate Chan. It says, those old farts in the morning, and I'm older than he. Yes, no, they're not the old farts. It's always fun to hang out with those guys and do the show with them. If it wasn't in the morning, I'd like doing it more, but it's just very early, and I'm not a Rise and Grind guy. And you got to play songs from The Weeknd and KDP, not your style or time. They're fine. They're just not great intro music a lot of times. They don't get you pumped up to go do a segment. And man, your NBA knowledge. Wow, appreciate that. You and Zay will blow our minds on NBA. I always enjoy talking NBA with Zay. He's a good guy to talk some basketball with. And tomorrow we've got to prep the audience with Usher songs in time for Sunday's halftime show. No, it's a 512 Friday, Chan. We're not going to do that tomorrow. We'll be promoting local music. You can go see on a Saturday night before the Super Bowl. You can go enjoy it. And you don't need to stop texting. You're doing good. And drink tea. Not a tea drinker really either. Just I'm picky with what I drink. All right. Let's talk some Texas football real quick before we get back to text line. Text line's open, 512-447-3776. 512-447-3776 is the text line. Which Longhorn freshman will make the biggest impact next season as the poll? Anything else you want to talk about as well? NBA trade deadline was today. We talked about that in the first hour. I'll put that podcast up shortly if you missed that, but there's some good stuff and some trades. Mavs made a bunch of trades. So if you have any thoughts on that, if you're a Mavs fan or you have some ideas about that, send that in. We'll get to that. But I do want to play a couple more clips from Sark's presser yesterday because he had some good stuff in there. Spoke to the media for 45 minutes in that game for that press conference yesterday. Some good stuff. One of the things he talked about was something that we've talked about on the show before about the transfer portal. And I know there's a lot of people that, kind of that are down about it or not. I like what Sark's mentality is towards the transfer portal and not being somebody who is just anti. He understands you have to roll with it. You can fight for change, but if you get behind the times like Clemson has, it really hurts. We know Baylor, it dropped off a lot when they didn't get their transfers. So Sark has a pretty level-headed approach to what he wants out of the transfer portal to keep the culture, to keep everything going. Here's what Sark had to say about the advantages of the transfer portal.
In the end, the transfer portal, I know there's a lot of, opinions on it. Is it a positive? Is it a negative? For us, it's a positive. We are never going to major in recruiting the transfer portal in a way that's going to make up our roster. We still want to recruit the bulk of our class from the high school ranks, highly competitive, high character kids coming from great programs, get them immersed in our culture, develop them in our program year 1, year 2, year 3. But what the portal does for a school like us, it can help you fill the voids when the voids happen. We lost 2 receivers that declared early for the NFL draft, and Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. We had a few other receivers decide to transfer on their own. All of a sudden, after that Sugar Bowl, I looked up and I had 3 scholarship receivers on our roster. Okay. We had 3 receivers committed out of high school. That left us with 6. So we went and signed 1 more high school kid in Aaron Butler to get us to 7. And then we went and took three transfers that got us to the number 10 at the receiver position, which is more of an ideal number to have on your roster. So that was really helpful and beneficial for us. We talked about the tight end position. We talked about the defensive line position. Andrew Makuba coming on board. All of a sudden, you have a couple guys that graduate, but all of a sudden Jaron Thompson decides to transfer, Keaton Crawford decides to transfer. We have got to fill up our roster, and we can't go into every season and me sitting here in August telling you we're a young football team, right? We've got to have some experience. We've got to have some depth there. So I do think the portal has been advantageous to us. Now we got to get those guys acclimated to our culture, our team, how we go about our business, and that's one of the fun parts. That's one of the challenging parts that we definitely are looking forward to.
I like that viewpoint on the transfer portal of, you just got to fill the holes and use it for what it is. But you see too many guys right now that are trying to stick their foot in this, draw the line in the sand. And that's not what I want. I think Sark is, may have his opinions about this and tries to fight it behind the scenes, especially the schedule, but he is going for it right now for Texas. By the way, I did want to say, you're not allowed to try and fool me on the text line. I appreciate the ones who told me I got fooled. You're not allowed to try and fool me when I woke up at 5 a.m. and I'm working a double. You're not allowed to do that to me. That's rude. You only got me because I'm very tired right now. That is all you got from me, trying to trick me on the text line. Just shame on you. Shame on you, random texter, trying to get me. I appreciate the person who pointed it out. I appreciate it. Keep sending those texts, though. We'll get back to it in a minute. I do want to play this sound, too. This is a little bit longer, some stuff we played earlier today in the morning show. But he was asked, Texas in 3 years has probably overachieved, got to their goal maybe faster. And I know at the bowl he said it was a 3-year plan, but that also kind of fits nice to the narrative. But you say, okay, well, you had this plan. You had your guys. You were ready to go. You knew you were going to have, older team. You were ready to go into the playoffs. You get through. You've improved every year, but now you're into year 4. If it was a 3-year plan, like you said, well, what's the plan now? What's the plan moving forward? If you had a 3-year plan to get Texas to back to where you want them to be, to where you needed them to be for this season, how do you go moving forward? And this is Sark's answer to the plan going forward and what he's trying to aim to do at Texas.
Not to just dive into like the plan of it, but I do think there's something that is important that hopefully our players really recognize. Okay, I'm a firm believer team success is what ultimately then provokes individual accolades, awards, and honors. Okay, so in year 1 we go 5-7, and that was a difficult season for everybody, but was needed, right? It was needed. But at the end of that year, that resulted in 0 players getting drafted in the NFL draft. Okay, we come back in year 2, we make some improvements, we make some adjustments, we go 8-5. We had 5 players get drafted into the NFL draft. Okay, we continue to try to evolve and improve and get the right pieces to the puzzle, the culture, all the things that we've talked about. We go 12-2, we win the conference championship, we make the CFP, and now we're staring at what could be 10 to 12 players drafted into the NFL draft. Some of those leaving early to go to the NFL draft to get drafted. And so I think that just speaks to our players like, man, if I can really commit to this team and commit to the developmental process, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the community, whether it's with my position coach, and the more that the team has success, the better opportunity I might have, A, to win a championship, B, fulfill my dreams of playing in the NFL, and C, having a life after football with some of the resources and things that we have here at Texas. That's the plan that we're on, right? How do we keep putting a team together that gives us the best chance to be successful, and then getting all these guys to buy into that team. And every year, each team takes on an identity of its own. I got 30 new players in that team meeting room this morning that we're talking about the things that are going to be necessary, where we're at a few weeks in, where we need to be a month from now as we go to spring break. And so that's always the challenge, right? And as I said before, I think teams a lot of times take on the personality of the head coach, of where he's at in his progression with the program. And for me, it's pretty simple, and I came here, like I said before, I didn't come here just to be a head coach again. I didn't come here to say that I'm the head coach at the University of Texas. Like, I came here to win a championship, and then if I can get one, I want to get two. And I'm borderline obsessed with it at this point. I know what it tasted like last year. I know how close we were, and I couldn't wait to get back. And hopefully that's what our team really starts to exude, is this obsession with being the best. Because we have a locker room full of young men that are driven, that are focused, that want to be the best. They want to be the best students that Texas football's ever had. They want to be the best team. They're totally going for it. But that's the challenge day in and day out. And so, September's going to come quick enough. We've got a lot of work to do between now and then to get ourselves in position to start that journey. But quite frankly, the journey started 2 weeks ago, right? As we were getting them up at 5:45, and we're in DKR, and we're starting conditioning. And that's part of being in college, and that's part of that process of what it looks like.
I love that. Obsessed, I'm borderline obsessed with winning. This is all it is. This is what you want to hear if you're a Texas fan. It is not the ways of, I think if we do what we do, we can continue to be well. But no, we're doing everything, and I will do everything. And I'm trying to get these players to do everything, and I'm trying to get the right players in to do everything. I love that attitude. Love that attitude from Sark. Trying to go for it for Texas. That's what you need to see going forward. And I'll play you one more. Actually, you know what? We may save that. We may hit that in the next segment. We'll see if we have time, because I do want to play you some stuff about the Super Bowl as well. But yeah, it was a good press conference yesterday. That's one of those clips where you like to see of where he's at and what his mind is going forward. Is that he has a plan that he expects to win. He expects to win multiple He expects to win at Texas. That's what he expects, and that's what you want to see from your head football coach going into the SEC. Is not any timidity, that he is not worried or stepping back. He is stepping up. He mentions in the press conference, when we're playing 16, 17 games a season, not saying we're not going to make the playoffs and this is how many games and hopefully we do. No, when we do. Taking the Alabama approach, and I talked about this on the morning show. We may play a couple of bit about how he said recruiting locally, that he's basically recruiting-wise, he says, we want to be the front runner for every single person that we want to go for in Texas and in the Texas area. And then if we're not the one they pick, we want to be on their list. We want to be one of the top people that they have. And I said this in the morning, that he wants to have it to where when you see the graphics and everybody's on Twitter or Instagram and they're posting their top 5 teams or whatever, he wants the Longhorn to be on all those images. He wants the Longhorns to be thought of as the team that you don't turn down a phone call from. If the Longhorns call you, do it. And I know we had a texter this morning say it sounds like an Aggie to want your name. And I go, no. It's not like an Aggie. It's like Alabama. Yeah, Alabama, you didn't turn down a phone call from Nick Saban when Nick Saban called to recruit you. And when Nick Saban called you, you said, look, he has to be in my top 3, my top 5, Alabama does. I'm probably not going to go, but I have to listen. And everybody knows if Sark calls and Texas calls, you better take that phone call because they got the coaching staff that's going to get you to the next level. They're going to put people in the NFL at a high rate. They're going to compete in the playoffs every single year. And they've got an NIL there too that's doing pretty well. I can hit every goal I want to hit there. If I want to go and compete, that's the place. And that's what he's saying in his recruiting. I want everybody to be, even if we don't get everybody, because we can't get everybody, and people are going to choose different places for different reasons. Maybe some people want playing time right away or whatever else. But I don't want them to say my top 5 teams are Florida and LSU. No, Texas needs to be in there because we want to be in that space where Alabama was for so long with Nick Saban. We want to be a factory that produces NFL talent, which means we have the best talent looking at us every time. That's what you want to see at Texas, and I like that Sark has got that mindset of no fear, and everyone should be respecting the name of the Texas Longhorns. That's what you want to hear from your head football coach. All right. Why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back, get back to the text line, play some sound, talking Super Bowl as well. But I want to get back to the text line. Big fat poll of the day today, since we're talking signing day. Which freshman for the Longhorns, which Longhorn freshman will be the biggest impact next season? Which one will make the biggest impact next season? Not career, but next season. Who will come in and make that impact? Let us know on the text line. 512-447-3776 is the text line. Send that in if you want to talk about NBA trade deadline, college basketball, pro basketball. You want to talk college football. You want to talk about the Super Bowl, any of that. Send it in. 512-447-3776. We'll get to that when we come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. I told you it's Super Bowl halftime performers, so we end our week Thursday. I know we have tomorrow, but it'll be 512 Friday. We end our theme of the week with Usher, who will be playing this year. Just trying to find. I don't know a ton of Usher. We'll see how much I know of what he plays on Sunday. But there's some Usher for you, Chan. There's some Usher. We're ready to go. Text line's open, 512-447-3776. With signing day just happening, which Longhorn freshman incoming 2024 will make the biggest impact next season? Let us know on the text line, 512-447-3776. Be Colin Simmons, Ryan Wingo. The wide receiver room is getting kind of tight, but maybe he'll get in there. Brandon Baker at the offensive line, Kobe Black and Xavier Filsaime in the secondary. Maybe Jarrett Gibson or Jordan Washington, running back and tight end. Maybe one of those guys. Let me know what you think on the text line, 512-447-3776. If you got any opinions on the trade deadline, send that in as well. We'll try and get to everybody. Texter, when I said I don't drink soda, he says, Olipop. I've heard about that. I've never tried it. It seems too healthy. I'm trying to be healthier, and then that one seems a leap too far. But I haven't tried it, so I won't decry it yet because I've not tried it. But right now, I'm done the sparkling waters and water and trying to be, hydrate and all that good stuff. Daydrinker 77 says newcomer freshman will be Colin Simmons, make an impact. Again, I think could make a really good impact in the transfer. Makumba, yes, I will put that Makumba will definitely be a huge impact next season. Excited to see what he can do at Texas. WPI Parts Guy says, do you think the D-line hire with Kinney is impactful? Yeah. I mean, it has to be. Now, it may be impactful negatively or positively, but I can guarantee you it will be impactful. Bo Davis was a great coach, but everyone has been raving about Kinney, so we'll see how it ends up going. He's got to get that D-line ready to go. He's got some more options. Trey Moore transferring into helping out on the edges, but that inside, what you're going to be able to do on the inside is going to be tough. Chan says wide receiver Moore will play to play in a vacated place by Jay Wood, and Niblett has been very quiet. The coaches haven't brought his name up much. I believe that Jonte Moore and Ryan Niblett will be good. I was saying, though, freshmen coming in. So freshmen next season, not the freshmen that are here now. But yes, the wide receiver room, those young guys are going to have to get some playing time. I agree with you there, Jan, for sure. And Texas, let's see, says Texas will be back. Sark is the right fit for the SEC. I think he is too. And not sure what happened in the Washington game, but our defense didn't show up. I think there was just holes in it. I think the edges weren't quite where you needed them to be, and the secondary was just not at all. The secondary was not ready to play in that game. Losing Catalan wasn't a help either, but they need to get better in that secondary. They're trying to do it. You lose a lot of pieces in that, but I think you add some more. The young guys are going to come up in it. It may not be fully there this year, but I think in another year, that secondary could get to where it's starting to be better and better and better. But I agree with you. The secondary was a real problem. All right, let's play this clip talking some Super Bowl. The text line will keep it rolling. This morning, though, they talked about the Chiefs' defense and a little bit of Super Bowl preview here, talking Chiefs' defense. Really something where people I don't think realize what an edge that is for the Chiefs on the two sides of defense. So hook 'em up replay here on the Sports Complex.
Okay, let's get into a little bit. I'll start with the Chiefs defense. I don't think we've talked enough about that Chiefs defense and how impressive they have been so far this season. And I threw this stat out there earlier. This is the best Chiefs defense that Andy Reid's ever had since Andy Reid's been there. He has not had a defense this good. They're allowing 15.6 yards, 15.6 points per game, in the last 20 games. So over the course of the season, 15.6 points per game. That is huge. Now, a big part of it is they know how to take away a number one wideout. Like whoever your number one guy is, they're going to take him out. They're going to take him away. For the 49ers, it's going to be interesting because 49ers, it depends on how teams are defending them as to who their number one wideout is. Now, most people are like, it's Deebo Samuel. Of course, he's the all-pro. I mean, he is the kind of the star of that receiving core. It is a lot of the time it's Deebo, but Deebo, if teams are playing you with a lot of zone coverage, that's when Deebo gets a lot of the bulk targets. When teams are playing with a lot of man coverage against the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk is their man beater. Right? Because when you try to play man coverage, he's going to end up in man-to-man coverage without help. Most of the time when they play man-to-man on Deebo, they double Deebo. They double him or they roll coverage his way or, they shift coverage his way. So Debo's not going to get straight up one-on-one. That doesn't happen a lot of the time. And Christian McCaffrey doesn't usually get one-on-ones with linebackers either. They'll put another DB on top of him to try to make sure that they, obviously cover all their bases. Brandon Ayuk has ended up in straight up man-to-man, and he's usually ended up on man-to-man without help, and that's when he's been eaten. So I don't know who's going to end up being. I don't know if the Chiefs are going to play. The Chiefs like to play a lot of man because they blitz a lot. So they play a lot of man because they want to blitz. As a matter of fact, Kansas City, nobody blitzes their DBs more than Kansas City does. And it's by far and away the most. All right. They are the most blitz-happy team from their defensive backfield in the NFL. And they do a really good job of taking away the number one wideout. So here are the clear number one wideouts against the Chiefs and what they've done. Stephon Diggs, 3 receptions, 21 yards. 4 receptions, 24 yards. Justin Jefferson, 3 receptions, 28 yards. DJ Moore, 3 receptions, 41 yards. Jamar Chase, 3 receptions, 41 yards. Tyreek Hill, 8 for 62 and 5 for 62. Devontae Adams, 5 for 73. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 for 71. Garrett Wilson, 9 for 60. Keenan Allen, he was 4 for 55. I mean, it doesn't. And you can go look at the wide receivers who are kind of they're on the verge of being a top wide receiver or the wide receiver one for their team. Those are the secondary options. Those are the guys who've had the biggest games against the Chiefs. All right. Look at Zay Flowers, 5 for 115. Christian Kirk had 11 for 110. Devontae Smith was 6 for 99. Christian Watson was 7 for 71. Alan Lazard was 3 for 61. Joshua Palmer, 5 for 133. It almost feels like when you look at the blueprint that the Chiefs have, they want to shut down your for sure number one wideout, whoever that's going to be. And for the 49ers, that's Debo. But it's tough to do that with Debo because Debo moves around. He's in the backfield sometimes. They're mostly Debo all across the formation. It's easier to take away Ayuk, potentially schematically, because he is more stationary. All right, they're not going to move him around as much. So watch out for that. They're good at taking away your first option at wide receiver. But after that, we've seen some of the secondary options, tertiary options, have success against the Chiefs. And that in this case, that means Kittle. I know you're big on Kittle having a big game in this game. He could be one of those
Just over
guys.
48 passing yards,
Yeah.
Receiving yards. That's my over.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that because like I said, I know Kansas City, they want to play with sub packages. They want to play with a lot more DBs, 5 and 6 DBs. They want to flood the field with speed and then blitz that speed. And one of the things that I think helps them out is they got so much speed on the field, they can cover better. They play sticky coverage. But that's going to make them susceptible potentially to the power run game, which we'll talk about obviously a little bit later on. So let's look at Brock Purdy against top 5 pass defenses because that's what Kansas City's defense is. It's a top 5 pass defense. I got 2 occasions where Brock Purdy has played a top 5 pass defense. Week 6 versus Cleveland. Week 16 versus Baltimore. Week 6 versus Cleveland. He was 44% completion percentage for 125 yards, 4.6 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The 49ers scored just 17 points. Week 16 versus Baltimore, 56% completion percentage. All right, 7.9 yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns. He had those 4 interceptions or whatever it was. The 49ers scored just 12 points before Brock Purdy left the game. So when he's had to play a top 5 pass defense, which Kansas City is, playing a lot of sticky coverage, he has not had his best performances. And the Chiefs defense ranks 3rd in per drop back EPA, expected points allowed. Expected points added, 3rd in success rate allowed, 4th in explosive play rate allowed, and 2nd in pressure rate this season. So that's basically the evidence suggests that this is the best pass defense he's going to face all year. And when he has faced a really good pass defense, he's been mediocre.
Yeah, I saw him play against the Browns, and that was when Debo got hurt, and it was bad. It was real. The weather wasn't great either.
Yeah,
it was a sloppy field and all kinds of things. But yeah, it was not good. And I remember talking to you. I think it was early on after they played Jacksonville, because remember the Chiefs lost their first game of the year to the Lions, and it was a really good game. It was lower scoring. I remember it was Kadarius Toney with the tip drill interception that really led to the Lions win. But even that night, you could see that their defense was improved. And then I saw him play Jacksonville. Remember, Jacksonville was a playoff team last year, and everybody thought Jacksonville was going to take that next step and become, one of these better offenses. A lot of people picked Trevor Lawrence to be the MVP of the league with the weapons he had. Mm-hmm. Early on, man, they just shut them down. And really, for me, it starts and ends with number 22, Trent McDuffie. He's a first-round pick out of Washington, the Huskies. And, man, that guy can cover.
Yep.
That guy can cover. You add L'Jarius Sneed to that. The former Texan Jordan Reed at safety.
He's good.
Really a good player. I mean, as you said it, they flood it with and this has been Brett Veach identifying these really good cover corners, kind of like Sark's trying to do right now with PK, trying to identify coverage, and they've done it in Kansas City, and they do it to a really high level. I mean, the points allowed, the second half points, the fewest in the league. And this everything you're saying just makes this game more and more compelling because the matchups are fascinating.
It is. Like I said, it's going to be a hell of a chess match between these two. How about this? And I talked about how much Kansas City likes to blitz their DBs. When they blitz at least one DB, just blitz one. All right, Kansas City has allowed 3.1 yards per play, and they get a 47% pressure rate. Those are really high numbers. Just shows you how creative Spags is with his DB blitzes. And Kansas City, this is the one thing I think this matchup between the Kansas City defense and the 49ers offense is going to be the most interesting matchup in my opinion. You got 49ers who are going to run a lot of 21 and 22 personnel. I talked about this. This is 2 back, 1 tight ends, 2 backs, 2 tight ends. Anytime, and by the way, Kansas City has only, they lined up against teams who ran 21 and 22 personnel, I believe it's 130 times so far this season. 75% of the time they play base defense when they face a 21 or 22 personnel set. Base defense is just 4 DBs, 3 or 4 linebackers, depending on what system you play, 3 or 4 defensive linemen. So basically, base is 4 DBs. That's your base. All right, nickel 5 DBs, dime is 6 DBs. They play base 75% of the time when they go up against or they're defending a 21 or 22 personnel set. That's important. I talked about how Shano can dictate terms based on formation, based on personnel grouping. If they're going to, this is not what Kansas City wants to do. They want to come out with a lot of DBs, flood the field with speed. They play, I believe, only 3 teams play more dime packages than Kansas City. They like just 6 DBs. They want to have a lot of DBs on the field. They believe you can better confuse pass protection, and you can also have better pre-snap disguise when you have those DBs moving around. Because DBs do move around naturally, and you can have those guys coming from every different angle. So that'll be interesting to watch. Will Kansas City counter the 21-22 personnel set of San Fran with going base personnel? If they do, advantage San Fran, because that's not how Kansas City wants to operate. If Kansas City comes out and decides to go nickel, defending those 21 and 22 personnel sets, by the way, which is 40% of Shano's offense, maybe the advantage switches back to Kansas City. But the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams house, Cardi B size, but is, will San Fran have a rushing advantage, right, when they go 22 or 21 personnel versus a nickel set or a nickel package for Kansas City where they will be lighter, all right, and going up against a heavy set. So this is the chess match that'll be going back and forth. It's going to be fascinating. Fascinating.
I can't wait. Both sides of the ball. You got Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan, 2 of the brilliant offensive minds in the game, and certainly Andy Reid, one of the all-time brilliant. Steve Spagnuolo, we know he was the designer of the game plan to thwart Tom Brady's perfect season.
Man.
Not go 19-0, and he did it again to Lamar Jackson 2 weeks ago.
Yes, he did.
And that's where maybe everything points back to the Chiefs, though the Sharps are still on the Niners, because maybe the biggest single coaching advantage is Spagnuolo versus Steve Wilkes, whose defense is, they had to admit they're loafing in the NFC Championship game and not giving max effort.
Mind-blowing.
I mean, that's a problem.
That's a problem.
And, they've been gouged in the first halves, especially against the Packers and Lions. So, this is a big one. And as I said, to start the week, it's really amazing to me how the roles have flipped from 4 years ago. 4 years ago, the Chiefs were the dynamic, high-powered, big play offense with Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins and Travis Kelce. And it was the Niners that had the lockdown defense with the game manager at the quarterback. This year, totally flipped. Now, the Niners are the big explosive offense, highest scoring team in the league, all the weapons and CMC. And it's the Chiefs that have become it. Whatever we say of Patrick Mahomes, he's more of a game manager now. I mean, he's dinking dunking, taking the first downs. Think about those first 2 drives against the Ravens, where you just couldn't get them off the field.
Nope.
Just making plays. Converting.
Yep.
And we're not going deep. You're not going to let us go deep. So we'll just get first downs, and we'll execute to the level that'll put it in the end zone. And he's doing it at a very, very high level. Hadn't thrown an interception in the postseason. And the defense, as you just documented in Rod's rant, really, really, really good.
Script going to be big in this game because that's essentially where you got your first 2 touchdowns. The only 2 touchdowns for the Chiefs in that game versus Baltimore was basically off the opening script.
That's right.
And after that, the chess match within the game, I think Mike McDonald might have won that actually. but he
only
lost.
gave up 3 points the rest of
Yeah.
the way, and the 3 points before halftime came courtesy of 2 personal fouls
Yeah.
by the undisciplined Ravens.
And that's why it's going to be big because I think you can just double and triple team Travis Kelce, which is what they did not do early on. I don't know why Baltimore didn't do that. I guess they felt they had Kyle Hamilton, and he can lock him up. He probably could, but that's why you got to watch Kelce in this game, guys. The last 2 weeks, Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, 83% completion percentage when he's targeting those two, 9.3 yards per attempt.
Good stuff there from Hook 'em Up with E and Rob B. Talking some Super Bowl. We'll talk more Super Bowl tomorrow. Want to get your predictions tomorrow too, so get those ready so we can have your predictions on the text line and get everybody written down, and we'll see who knows football the best, and I'll be judging you on the text line. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll come back and wrap things up here on the Sports Complex. Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. All right, we got to get out of here. Appreciate everybody joining me on the text line and hanging out with me today. We'll be back tomorrow, talk some more college basketball, get you ready for a game this weekend with Texas, get you ready for the weekend in the NBA, get you ready for the Super Bowl. We'll go for it. We'll keep it rolling here on the Sports Complex tomorrow. I'll try and get some more sleep before then. I don't have to be up in the morning, so I'm looking forward to it. Only got like 5 or 6 more hours of work to do today. We can get it done, right, guys? All right. Appreciate you guys. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, be kind, be safe, keep your underwear clean, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow for more of the Sports Complex.